Hello and welcome to Partyline Chat. My name is Michael Finney. We're hanging out today. We've had to reschedule our intended plans for today for the matchup with Shaw Wars, but that's all right. I want to introduce the other guys hanging out. Tim, Pastoor, you want to introduce yourself? Talk a little bit.
Hey everybody, my name is Tim Pastoor. Some of you might know me maybe from Twitter. I've been around in the Bitcoin community for a couple of years. Some of you might know me from the talking I do about peer-to-peer identity and reputation systems, which is a bit of a fake subject because there's not really anything that has been adopted on a mass scale yet. But that's where my main interest lies. Like closest to what interests us all, I think. So hopefully that explains it a little bit, just a few lines.
Tim? Other Tim?
Hey, other Tim here. Nisha here on Twitter. Just hanging out.
Yeah, very good. So, we're not going to talk about security and stuff like that today. We'll save it for the future. But obviously, I think there is one topic on everybody's mind right now. And, it's the price of peanuts at the circus. You guys are both based out of the U.S. I'm here in the U.S., but I'd love to hear some perspective on what is being shared informationally, or what is being said as determined out in your countries. I guess, Tim, you're in Canada, so you're closest, nearest by. Maybe there's less information discrepancy between these two countries since we are so close. What do you think? What is going on up there in terms of the election story?
Up here it's kind of interesting. I guess everybody's just kind of watching in anticipation of what the results are going to kind of be like, right?
Right. So the election results keep kind of coming in, but they're very contested. And that's been probably the story, at least for the last couple of days. And I think it's going to be the story for, if not the next couple of days, potentially the next couple of weeks. What is the Canadian government saying as, what is their perspective or their posture as it relates to the election or the outcome?
To be honest, I'm not too sure what their perspectives may be on it. I haven't been following a lot of it too closely. A lot of everybody's just kind of been watching the news, seeing a lot of discrepancies with the numbers and whatnot, and how they're doing all those recounts.
Yeah, I think that's basically where we're all at here as well. Obviously, like, we've got three major cable news outlets, channels, and they are kind of pushing to make announcements or give airtime about announcements or whatever. And so that's been kind of interesting because people perceive them as having a bias, and I think in most cases they do. They've backed candidates or been against candidates, even back to the primary too. So that's been, I think, a little tough when people hear official media or news telling them one such thing, but they're not necessarily involved with the decision-making process themselves.
Yeah, it kind of brings in a lot of noise to all the aspects of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very difficult thing for people to sort through every single day when you're hearing like conflicting information or just A lot of very kind of partisan, reactive commentary. I mean, through the week, the president getting tweets blocked on Twitter, I think that was kind of a big story for a lot of people. Whether they liked it or didn't like it, they were still talking about it. It was still an active conversation that was going on.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on that, Tim?
Well, from our side of the pond, it's kind of like I'm in the Netherlands, for those who don't know. So in Europe. And generally, Europeans lean a bit more to the left compared to Americans, I think. So over here, like the difference between the two parties, like on the left, you have Social Democrats, and then on the right is what we call liberals. So like the conservatives that you have in the US is like a step past what, we call conservative, or so to speak, because we literally call them liberals.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does.
So generally, the view over here leans a bit more to the left. So you also notice that in the media, about how Trump is always lying, etc. And like, I'm no expert, I'm no fact checker or whatever, but you just notice the general tendency into what direction they lean. Personally, I don't really care. Like, it's not my country. I don't live there. Of course, it has impact on geopolitics, and so in the end, also on me. But that's like really down the road, or so to speak. I'm not too worried about it. I personally see it as it doesn't really matter whether you put somebody on the left or on the right in that seat, because in the end, they're all backed by the same parties, like the Wall Street, big tech. It's always the same money basically behind it. And personally, I'm always more interested in following the money. And when you do that, you always end up with the same parties. So I wonder how much of a difference it's going to make. I'm just kind of sad to see how divided the U.S. is right now over something which I personally see as, really trivial. I would prefer to just see people focus on what they have in common, so they can actually, constructively work on solutions, work together on things. But that's probably, the ideal or the perfect world even. And we don't live in the perfect world. So it's kind of sad to see how much people focus on the differences between us while we have so much in common. And yeah, especially with the economy in mind and everything, with these lockdowns, with COVID, I'm afraid that the sentiment is not going to get a lot better. And also don't see how it's going to get better if we just, blame each other for whatever we believe in, because it's so subjective. It's as if we're arguing over vanilla ice cream versus chocolate ice cream and which one is the best. That's how I see it. So yeah, all I'm hoping for is that it's not going to get out of hand, and the country is not going to get too divided, because I don't see how that could end up in any good way.
Hey, what's up, Evan?
That's my 2 cents. Hey, Evan.
You got your mic turned on? It was on. He popped in for a minute. At any rate, maybe he'll turn his mic on in a minute. So what we're talking about right now is just kind of hearing these guys' perspective, their international perspective on the U.S. election right now, and where they think things might head. Obviously, everybody's kind of in the dark, I think, equally. And I think because it's such a close election, it really implies like how difficult that choice is, how undefined these choices are, even though people, are very passionate about Trump in different directions. There's such a huge percentage of the population that is uncertain about the differences between him and Joe Biden, that there's no definitive, clear, outright blowout candidate in this election, that everybody really leans towards. And that's why it's so difficult to do these counts. all the other stuff aside, if you think that there are nefarious things at play or whatever, it still is probably the likely case that like most people are looking for a candidate that isn't really saying the things that they want to hear from a candidate right now. Certainly I don't think that like people are galvanized in the same way as they might have been for other candidates in the past, whether that's good or bad, but it definitely creates this difficult air of uncertainty while you are waiting for some actual information to be confirmed. Last time I looked, there were still 5 states that didn't necessarily have an outcome for the presidential election to offer up, and they were in the high 90% of data reported. Excuse me.
Which states are those?
I'm trying to pull up some information here to take a look at it. Let's see what it loads. Okay, so four states currently, and Alaska not declared. Okay, so that's 5. So Arizona, with 96% reported, Georgia 99% reported, North Carolina 97% reported. Excuse me, Pennsylvania 97% reported, and Alaska 58% reported, which is nuts to me. I mean, they've had days and days and days. It seems odd, that there's this minuscule number of votes that still have to be counted to usher in a decision. And a lot of these other states are really close. When you look at them, there's only really a couple of percent making a difference in a lot of places.
And that's where it could get interesting. Like, again, I'm no expert on the topic, but if you think about Florida in 2000, what happened there?
Yeah.
And then if you've seen the reactions between left and right, over this election, imagine if something would happen in the courts which would overturn this, in favor of Trump. I think a lot of people would get really mad, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you. And well,
The
and then
media already declared him a winner.
Right.
And I don't know if that's fair or not. I don't know if that's the right call or not. I'm just saying that in a scenario, which is probably very unlikely, but it could happen. Like George Bush also didn't have the popular vote.
Right.
He had less votes than Gore, but because they stopped counting, I believe, right? Is why he won. So I'm curious what's going to happen. Like, I've heard a lot of stories about irregularities.
Right.
I don't know what the truth is of that. If
Yeah.
it goes to court and it turns out to be true and some votes get thrown out, or so to speak, I'm not sure what the right term is for it, or how it works. But if something like that could happen, I could imagine some chaos. And again, I just hope that that it's not going to divide people any further, because I don't see how that could help anybody.
Yeah, I don't see how it helps either. And I do want a legitimate decision to be made. I guess when you have such a small divide of people, it's like, well, okay, maybe you just say like, maybe we need another whole election, maybe you throw that out and you say, okay, we need another candidate or 2 candidates or something. Ideally, I don't have a good solution. I don't think that anybody's going to be like super happy with the way things play out here. Half of all those voters are going to be unhappy with the outcome, just along the numbers that are out there. provided that nothing was, tampered with.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months.
Yeah, I don't want to
And
wait a
then
few months. Sorry, go ahead.
There's also a scenario that if they can't come to a conclusion that Pelosi ends up becoming president, or maybe at least temporarily, and again, that's a really small chance that that's going to happen.
Right.
Just saying, it's a possible scenario. Or if they're in a deadlock and the House doesn't agree on a candidate, etc., then you do get to a point where they take the Speaker of the House, I believe.
Yeah.
President.
I think that. Yeah, I think that's like if there's like X number of like fallback paths.
Yeah. Maybe it would unite everybody because I think everybody hates Pelosi. Maybe it could be a good thing.
She has a lower approval rating, right?
Wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. I can't
Trump.
remember ever talking to anybody who likes her.
I mean, I'm sure her district likes her.
Fair enough.
Wherever, that she comes from originally, because she's I think she represents like San Francisco and California, and that's a very dense area, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a strong representation of what's happening elsewhere or in majority. But she is, I guess, through seniority and what other accomplishments, she's kind of leading that party in the House. If I'm getting it all correct. I could be mixing it up.
Sounds correct, but
yeah, House of Representatives.
Political system works a lot different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've kind of wondered, like, how would you reconcile having a prime minister that is elected or selected by, Congress in coordination with or in lieu of a president, It seems difficult.
Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure technically what difference it would make. Like right now, it's already chosen by the formation of the cabinet, or so to speak. So generally, the leader of the largest party becomes the prime minister. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but that's how it generally works. I don't know if it would make a lot of difference because we are essentially already electing them that way because they're the because it's generally the leader of the biggest party who becomes the prime minister.
Right, but that doesn't necessarily happen that way here. The biggest party, because like you guys will establish coalitions too.
Yeah.
To be able to select a prime minister. So that is kind of very different. There's a much more diverse party representation. And so those people have to actually come together and find a candidate that is approvable by those people in general. Otherwise, you throw it out and you vote again, no?
Well, they try to form a cabinet multiple times if it fails. So like Belgium, I believe, in Belgium, they one time they weren't able to form a cabinet for 530 days or something like that. So that pretty much was no government that could approve new laws and such. So the country was kind of at a standstill. They had something similar in Spain for a year or something, I believe. I believe if you look at the economic numbers that entrepreneurs didn't really mind it because at least they knew that nothing was going to change. But that was one of the arguments I heard for it. I'm also not an economist, so I probably shouldn't be bringing that up. But that's what I've heard and read. That was kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a whole different system. Over here, you have multiple parties. Those parties have to figure out what they agree on, what they don't agree on, and that way they come up with a plan for the next 4 years on how they're going to rule together, basically, because you have the cabinet and then you have the opposition. Then the cabinet needs to be more seats than the opposition, because otherwise you can't really get anything through Parliament. So a lot of the, how do you say it? There are a lot of similarities, I think. When you look at, how it works in the U.S., because you have the House and the Senate, we have something similar over here with the Parliament and the Senate. The way you have to still find consensus somehow on how you're going to rule over the next couple of years is probably a bit different, but there are some similarities. But I'm not sure which system is better. Like, I don't really have a strong opinion on that. They're both experiments. They were both invented when people still rode with feathers. And in this day and age, it wouldn't surprise me if we do come up with something better eventually. But generally, you need a lot of chaos first. Things have to turn worse before they get better generally. So hopefully we can skip that part this time. But it does feel a little outdated, and I have to say it's even more like, as an outsider looking at the U.S. with more than 300 million people represented by, just a few people.
What parts look outdated?
Well, just the fact that that people still think that you can have one person to rule more than 300 million people, basically.
Well, I don't know that there is one person.
No, that's true, and that's kind of my point as well. That I don't think that the president has as much power as people generally like to make you believe. Like,
sure.
Before Trump became president, everybody was talking about how he was going to get the nuclear football, and that we would all die, etc. But if I look at the policies in general, it's not that much different as how it has been in the 4 years before him under Obama. Of course, there are differences, but I don't think they're that big, to be honest.
Right. I mean, there's a momentum that's already kind of in play, in course for presidents, because the previous ones leave behind different issues or encounters, wars in the Middle East or the topic of Guantanamo Bay. There's lots of themes that pass between different presidents, and I would assume that happens for prime ministers as well.
Yeah,
I guess
it's always the fault of the predecessor. It's never their fault,
right? They're dealing with that way. They can kind of say that it wasn't something they started, but they're trying their best with it, and whether they do or don't kind of doesn't matter, because it's already in play for whatever benefactors are downstream from it.
Right. That's why I was saying earlier that I would like if people would find some more consensus on the things they do agree on, like the issue with ICE at the borders with the kids in cages. I think that's a good example here. Like, most people probably agree that's pretty horrendous, to separate children from their parents, and the way that people are treated over there, apart from what you think on migration and such, just purely the treatment of people. But it's not something that just came up under Trump. It was already happening under Obama, maybe even before that under Bush. I don't know. And the same thing with drone attacks, wars in the Middle East, you name it. So, yeah, it's kind of hard as one person to just step in and fix everything. And of course, they promise it, but I don't think it's ever possible. It's kind of funny that we keep trying it the same way and that people still believe it every 4 years. Like, if we vote in this other person, then everything's going to change. But Joe Biden also voted to go to war with Iraq, to name one example.
Right. So it's basically as if we keep getting some of the 20th century on us. It's impossible to get free of some of that legacy.
Well, I think as long as we're divided, it's like divide and conquer, right? So as long as we're divided and we're arguing about, I don't know, pretty trivial stuff most of the time, then I don't know if we're ever going to solve any of these issues. As long as we don't start agreeing on that and don't let the media play us, and other people who have really clear incentives to divide people.
What do you think is being used, if anything, to divide Europe or maybe even just particular nations over there? Because it's not as if Europe hasn't had its unrest and also had to deal with COVID in a handful of different ways. Different nations have chosen to approach that differently, and some nations have had they've reported larger numbers of fatalities and things like that associated with it. So are those divisive issues for most of Europe?
From what I'm seeing around me, I think it's more divisive than people realize right now.
Yeah.
Because lockdowns and such, they affect a lot more people harder and on a longer time frame than most people see, I think. So I think that's only going to get visible over the next year or so, when we really start to notice the economic effects of these policies. I do have an opinion about it, but it's a pretty long one to explain, probably because it doesn't really agree with status quo.
Well, I mean, you're not bound to any time constraints for that, so
don't have to go to commercials yet.
No, we don't have any commercial breaks.
All right, so how do I explain this in a proper way? Because the thing is, like, I kind of agree with the crazy people, or so to speak, but on the other end, I try to base it, all of science. So, for example, if I look at the panic that we have right now around COVID, if I compare it to the numbers, and again, I'm no expert, I'm no doctor, I'm no scientist, so you probably shouldn't even be listening to me about this subject. But if I look at how many people have died and you compare it to other years, it's basically a bad flu year. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying it's just the flu, because it isn't. It's much more serious than a regular flu. There are people with long-term effects. It's more serious than the flu, so to speak. But if I look at the numbers, the way we're acting right now, I wonder if it's the right approach, than to just, open up a bit more and accepting that some people are going to die, which sounds really harsh. And that's also why it's not happening, because as a politician, you can't sell that point, because people are afraid, so they want solutions, they demand solutions. And that's what we're seeing right now with these lockdowns, but they're not based on science as far as I know. So I'm pretty skeptical about the results, like net sum, if they're going to be positive, because I highly doubt that. Because to name one example, like people who have cancer that could have been treated, relatively well. So if you have a sort of cancer where normally 80% would survive nowadays because of treatment and such, this year, because we're postponing treatments and everything, that number might drop to like 20-30%. And those are generally people who would have otherwise lived for maybe decades. But if you look at the people who die from COVID, and I should actually say with COVID, because
Right.
most of those people don't even die from COVID, but they die with it.
Right.
Those are mostly people over 70, 80, even 90. So it's a really hard discussion to have because you don't have enough data right now to say anything useful about it. But if I'm just making my uneducated guess, looking at the data that we do have right now, I do honestly doubt if it's going to be positive, and that's in the long term.
Sure. I think those are fair perspectives to have too, because there are a lot of people that they've had their livelihood very much affected, just because of the way that everyone has been made to move differently about their life. So I'm not trying to value money over people's lives, obviously, but you know, outside of the immediate impact, there are going to be longer term, midterm impacts that we have not yet quantified, and I I'm interested in seeing how that goes, as you have outlined as well, because you look at different states here that have responded differently, or you look at different nations in Europe that have responded differently, and I think there's enough variance in that data to start to say, okay, at least for this location, that approach has worked or has not worked, and maybe those approaches can be used elsewhere. Oh, hey, all right. So, want to actually say, hey, we've got. You changed your Twitter handle, Bryan.
Yeah, you can call me Bryan on here though.
Yeah, to Mr. Baggyhead.
Hey.
And also Mark.
Hi, guys.
Mark Wilcox is in here as well today.
What's up, Tim?
Hey, how's it going?
Invited
Hey, Bryan, Mark.
invited him over. Do you want to say hello, Mark? Test your mic.
Yep, hello.
Hey there, how you doing?
How's it going?
Now that you guys are here and you're hanging out, we're kind of talking election. We're talking a little bit of data analysis.
One day I missed the first hour.
Yeah.
Politics, of course.
Yeah. Real nice, bud. So, let me tag you guys. Feel free to jump in wherever, if you've been listening or if you haven't, and we'll make the best of it.
I actually haven't heard anything you guys have said so far.
Okay. Well,
I've been driving.
All right. Well, in that case, we've talked a little bit about the discrepancies that we're seeing and the uncertainty that is breeding. And these guys, luckily for us, now we've got even someone from another country. So Tim, Inertia here, our regular Tim, he's from Canada, so he gave us some perspective. Tim Pastoor is over in the Netherlands joining us.
So they're laughing.
Right. And then Mark, you're down in New Zealand. If you want to give a little bit, we could round back around to that initial part. And if you want to give us some perspective on the outlook on the U.S. election from New Zealand, that's valuable too.
I think generally we're kind of like, this is sort of the most American of any American elections. They always have some drama, and Americans are always sort of crazy and not understandable to us. So I guess that's how I'd summarize it. Like, no one's really talking about it down here. It's just like, oh yeah, those crazy Americans are still crazy.
This seems like a Coke and McDonald's election.
Yeah.
I'll say like since 2000, if the election itself wasn't crazy, the campaigns are crazy. I think the second Obama campaign, I forget who to get run against Mitt Romney. That might be the most forgettable campaign election of all time. But when Obama ran against McCain, we had the whole Palin stuff and the Tea Party stuff. So it was very entertaining. As long as it's entertaining, I'm okay. But I will say, just if we want to talk about the election, I don't have any thoughts really about like how to improve election transparency. I don't think necessarily like blockchain is the answer to that. I just don't. I have a hard time bridging blockchain to the physical world. Like in my head, maybe somebody can send me a white paper. I don't know. But I think it's going to go to the courts. And I think to keep it kind of plain, I'll say like I remember Al Gore and George Bush pretty well. I was old enough to remember. And I mean, I was old enough to remember and like understand what was going on and stuff. I was, out of high school. But this time around, I think a lot of people are saying that Al Gore got 30 days, and that's 35 days or whatever, and that's true. And the press can ignore reasons to go to court all they want. That's fine. I don't think anybody's talking about SCOTUS telling PA to get ready, basically. But eventually, like, my argument is that they meaning the Democrats, contested the 2016 election for like 3 years. And I don't mean that like in a joking way where, they just like, they've refused to accept it. And that's kind of like a meme that the right uses against the left now.
Right.
I mean it more like they actually spent, $70 something million or $40 million or whatever, $200 million, who knows, who cares, in 3 years using the Department of Justice to actually investigate. So Trump obviously can't take 3 years, but he's due. And I just think like I don't know. The two weird things that I see are like I didn't think they'd be making lists this soon. And if you start to look at things that are not involving the presidential election, the Democrats got housed. And 2022 looks really bad for them. And yeah, I think it's going to be making lists before there's an even certification by a single Secretary of State is just very like it's just pure iconic Democrat at this point. Like the pundits of like some Democrats are fine, obviously. Like, you know what I mean? Like some Republicans are fine, some Democrats are fine, but the pundits are getting really obnoxious, and the leaders of the Democrat Party and the pundits that kind of like push that message, making lists on the weekend after the election, saying things like there should be no survivors. That's a bad look, and I think it's going to backfire because everything that they've done backfires. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I don't think that that was a point that I tried to make earlier. I don't think that the outcome is set in stone here because we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. And for people to get overly excited about, premature celebration, that
they just want their Netflix and their box wine and their Nepalese handmade cat bed so they can take pictures of their cats on Instagram and auto share those Instagram pics to Facebook. Like that's all they want. They just want to be able to like take pictures for Instagram of their favorite brand or intellectual property that they purchase and consume, and then add an animal and then some tacos and some wine. And they want to put it on Instagram and auto share that to Facebook for the rest of their lives. Like they the like it's just funny how quick it's like they think that it's like a lot of people, and I'm talking about the people who are like dancing in the streets and who are like crying, like Van Jones, who I think he was acting more so than genuinely crying. But this whole the loudest part of the Democrat Party that aren't the left, that aren't like Antifa, they're not like hardcore leftists or whatever. The loudest voices of those parties are just like the cat moms and like their boyfriends. Like they just want to go back to normal so badly. And the idea that there's any kind of normal to go back to after this is just ludicrous. And they're gonna, even if Biden wins and Trump leaves office, probably in some hilarious fashion. Like even if Trump loses, it's going to be an amazingly entertaining loss. And then Biden's going to like he already has picked Dick Cheney like to help him with his foreign policy. It's so mind blowing because I have friends that we sat together and like criticized people like Colin Powell and Dick Cheney and Bob Mueller for sending American kids into Iraq for literally no justifiable no legal reason.
Well, Halliburton contracts maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, but no, like,
yeah, no, I see.
I'd rather them just say that.
Yeah,
I mean, like, guys, we need to stabilize this region by force.
Let's go get that fucking oil. Yeah,
right. Or not just
know what you're getting into then.
Yeah, we have a sneaking suspicion that this person that we put in charge 20 years ago or 40 years ago, whatever, he's not putting the oil where we want it. So we're going to just forcibly handle this situation. Like, I think, honestly, back in like 2000, even before like 9/11, I think American would have been like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I think Trump kind of proves that if you just tell people like, hey, let's go grab the fucking oil, literally make that your campaign slogan, that most of Americans, or a good portion of Americans, would agree.
I don't think a lot of people understand. I think people on the right, actually, I don't know if people on the right understand this, but I know a lot of people on the left just are missing the plot where this actually, like, not giving Trump the chance to go to court and possibly be handed a ruling that goes against him, because I think Kavanaugh's already ruled against him twice, but whatever. He has a chance to lose, and not giving Trump that chance and just kind of pushing this narrative like you're laying down new tarmac, and you're just like forcing the narrative on it like with a roller. That just makes Trump a martyr. And like, you were going to get Trumpism either way, and Trumpism starts when Trump leaves. And you can get Trumpism now, or you can get Trumpism in 4 years, but you're going to get it. And if you force him out like this, and by force him out, I mean like don't give him, just kind of like browbeat the public and don't give the law the chance to kind of just work itself out. Because again, Gore got 30 days. The Democrats took 3 years. If you don't do that, he's a martyr. He's an instant martyr, and he will go and he will start a media TV network. It will absolutely destroy their competition, to the point where like Comcast won't air it. Like Comcast won't air the Trump TV network. You know what I'm saying? Like,
he's going to be the resistance leader of everybody who gets banned from Twitter.
Pretty much, and then he'll hold rallies like once a month. He'll tour the country holding rallies. This time you'll pay $5 to get in, maybe $10 to get into the pit. He'll make mad money, and he will sit there and anoint MAGA Congress people and local politicians in every state in the country. And in 2022, the Democrats are not going to know, because they're still going to be just gazing at their genitals and wondering about them. Because all they do is like look at their genitals and their skin color and gaze about it and just fantasize about like what it means, and they wonder if they have the right genitals or the skin color. And so when 2022 hits and Biden has troops somewhere that they don't belong, or if he's still alive, or Kamala has troops somewhere where they don't belong, and you still have people of the squad saying like, you know, same shit they've been saying for the last like 4 years. It's over. Like, and I mean, it's over on like a local level. It's going to get crushed on school boards. Are going to get like the last thing the Democrats want is Trump touring the country, creating Trumpism, which will last a generation or two. He dances. Like he dances. Like, I don't know if there's another, like, you know, you got Justin Trudeau going dancing in India looking like, but most of the time when presidents dance, it's that asshole, I'm in Africa and I'm surrounded by a bunch of brown people, so I'm just going to shake my hands around and kick my feet out. This guy creates borderline festivals at airports and dances to YMCA, a gay anthem, as he walks as the president of the United States, dancing the YMCA as he
That was pretty impressive. Why do you think he did that? Like, I saw Joe Rogan with what's his name, Kyle Kolinsky, from the top of my head. I'm not 100%
Kyle
sure.
Kolinsky is the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was showing the video from like his what do you call it, the ending.
Did
video.
Kyle at least laugh? Did Kyle at least laugh about it?
Yeah, he seems to be a
good.
good sport about it because he's critical about Democrats as well. I think.
Yeah, he seems to be somewhat of a normal person.
Yeah, he's able to think for himself, so to speak, instead of just repeat the party propaganda.
Yeah.
That's what I appreciate about him, and the same about Joe Rogan. You know, you can look at him, you know, think he's a chimp, you know, just does fighting stuff, and
he's as close as you're going to get with an audience that big.
Yeah, what I like is that he tries to get people on from both sides. But anyway, my point where I was going was that that video. If you compare it to that last video in his campaign from 4 years ago, it seemed like really well thought out. Especially if you compared it to the contrast was huge, as he would say, it's huge.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like
he was really pointing out the issues. Sorry to interrupt you there. Just finish.
Finish.
Like in that video from 4 years ago, he was really explaining, you know, what's wrong with the system, how he was going to fix it. He discussed policy and everything. And now it was just YMCA, and he's like jerking off in the air or something. I don't know what he was doing.
It's almost like a Cosby cross with like some kind of robot dance.
Yeah.
It's good times.
What do you think he did? Was he trying to lose, or did he want to go home?
No,
did Melania push for that video, or what was going on there?
What video are you talking about specifically?
That last one where he's just dancing to the YMCA song.
Oh no, I think the Trump team understands that like creating joy is better.
You think so?
Yeah. I think that if you're a Trump supporter, you love that. Like, a lot of people don't understand that. Like the baby Trump balloon. Like Trump supporters don't care about that. They love that shit. Make a baby Trump and fly it. That's hilarious. Like you look stupid making it. Like that's kind of like the mentality. The ones that get angry about that kind of stuff are like they're like the fringe Trump supporters that they just want like a full. They want to put Democrats against the wall or some shit. That's like nonsense. But most Trump supporters are just like, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I can tell you from talking to them, and I'm one as well. I never in my life thought I would watch a president give a speech and laugh and smile and like text a friend of mine and be like, "Are you watching this?" And that's not even the dancing. Like, and that's because most of the time it's like a stand-up comedy show. You know, he gives his talking points about what he wants to do and what he has done and all that stuff. But in between, he's going off the rails. He's giving jokes. He's making fun of his opposition, making fun of your opposition is the political thing. They had jokes in the 1800s and the 1700s, whatever. And I'm sure even going back to the European systems of government, there's been times where the British Parliament, you guys joke at each other all the time. And as Americans, we watch, the UK Parliament and like these other European systems where they kind of have this like freewheeling dialogue, in the House, and before Trump, we used to yearn for that because like we had these stiff people that got up and they're like, the distinguished gentleman from South Carolina is wrong about this, and here's some poster board stats. Like now, it's all different now. And it's going to continue to be different, I think, for American politics. I think you're going to see that like successful politicians are going to have to be, they're going to have to make you feel good, you know. And I don't mean like feel good as in like we defeated Trump, I feel good about it. I mean like you watch that person speak and interact with people, and he makes you feel good. If you watch, like for example, everybody's upset everybody in the media is upset about Trump golfing for the last 2 days. His fans love that he's golfing right now. And then he went and got a picture taken with a bride or something like that yesterday at his golf club, and like just Trump fans like that stuff. While meanwhile the press is just like, what's he doing? That's not presidential. And he shouldn't be golfing. He should be writing his concession speech, and like, no Trump supporter really wants him to do the normal thing, and so I think normal politicians are going to go by the wayside, and I think that's a good thing, I don't know, but I think that video, to answer your question, is literally like his campaign staff understands, and they have look. I mean, the reason he won, or a large part of the reason he won, one of the reasons he was victorious in 2016 was that the campaign was fun. It was fun for people on the internet. It was fun. Like, it was the meme war. It was fun. And he kind of continued that throughout his, whole 4 years. When the press would give him grief, he'd give him grief right back. And like, half the country's like, how dare you talk to a journalist that way? It's like, what? You know what I mean? It's like, what are you talking about? And, when he told Leslie Stahl, Leslie Stahl is like, here's a fact. And he's like, I don't think that's a fact. And she's like, I told you it's a fact. He's like, what does that mean? That's, yes, like his all Trump supporters, regardless of if they're like hard right or like centrist, or they were independent or they left the Democratic Party, all Trump supporters like that stuff, where he just, he acts like a normal dude getting interviewed. You know what I mean? He like treats the press normally. If you ask him some question that's clearly like an arrow, you know what I mean? You're clearly trying to knife him one. He's going to be like, what a shitty way to ask that question. He's just going to tell you straight up, like, that's a horrible way to ask that question. Now, he did that a couple times when they were like going over the COVID deaths and things like that. So yeah, I think I think it's interesting that some countries have not jumped on board. Like the president of Mexico said it was too early to congratulate Biden, I think, the other day. So yeah, I don't know. Either way, it's bad for the Dems. You know what I mean? Like, I think the worst case, it's funny because the worst case scenario is that the Trump supporters don't get to see their person kind of just being funny in the White House. It was like a sitcom for a while with good results for the country, like domestically, civil issues notwithstanding, economically and foreign policy was great, so
Definitely the most entertaining president.
it was an amazing show, so, and imagine what he would have done if he wasn't just constantly just like, I don't want to say under attack, but like under attack from like a pretty aggressively hostile, news, a handful of corporations that realized they made money by being hostile. You know what I mean? Like, they
Right.
weren't even hostile for an organic sake. Like they just realized it was profitable. So I don't know. I think the polls are done. I think Frank Luntz said, if their polls are off this year, they all need to look for jobs. I think he should do that. think they should all do that. I think that's just like you're either complicit in some kind of scam or you're just bad at your job. And I don't understand. I mean, well, Mark Alpert's working for Newsmax now, so apparently you can be bad at your job and still get jobs. But yeah, I think the media, like, I don't know, like, the shitty thing is that a lot of people that are anti-Trump, like, these people look at like news media like the same way they look at like celebrities, like movie stars. Like, I saw this really cringy, Leslie, the woman from Ghostbusters or whatever, the black lady from Ghostbusters, Leslie something. She was like, just showing the TV on one night and like spitting venom at Mitch McConnell and how he's like not even human and he's evil. But then she, like, literally, if you scroll down her timeline, she's got a video like or some tweets where she's like, just praising the guy who does the maps on MSNBC, like Steve Kornacki, and it's almost like she's enthralled by his celebrity, and like she's a celebrity, and so I think, like, the idea that like that these media talking heads are as important as they are now is kind of a problem. I think we need more news networks to kind of balance that out, I guess. I don't know what the solution is to the shitty journalism. I really don't. I don't think anybody does.
Well, in terms of like what is journalism, what is reporting, what is coverage, what is entertainment product, that line is
I guess I shouldn't call them journalists.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that what we're watching on Fox, CNN, or MSNBC is journalism. I think we're watching political entertainment product. And like when you are aware of that, then you realize that this is all kind of connected with advertising. And so long as those advertisers and the mechanisms that serve advertisers are in control of the casino in everybody's head, you're going to lose.
The problem is that so many people that have read manufacturing consent think that these election calls are legitimate. You know what I mean? Like, the idea that the news, even when it was like a print industry, is driven by truth is just absurd, and it's provable too. So, like, yeah, they're definitely a journalist, but the problem is that, like, if I go talk to somebody, if I go to my one of my friends' house tonight, and we talk about the election, like, they're gonna call Rachel Maddow a journalist. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, and the kind of authority that gets bestowed on them.
I like the term pundit.
I guess.
I think it works.
I mean,
functionally.
It does work.
But that's also been my point over the past couple of years. Like, I'm always talking about reputation systems. My point has always been that if it's centralized, that whatever you think of something or somebody, it's always subjective. So as long as you have one party curating the information stream for you, it's always going to suck, even if they try really hard to make it relevant for you. Because in the end, you always know better what you want to see or hear. Like with the news, like what's your definition of a journalist? It might differ with somebody else's definition. And that's why I think, sorry for plugging this, but that's like, I have pretty strong opinion on this one. So that's why I figured, it's relevant here in this context. Then we need better systems there to curate our own information feeds and to decide what enters our information stream. Because over the past 20 years, we kind of ditched the whole stranger danger concept. Everybody can just come barging into your network and start screaming, and they're just there. Can get spammed to death, basically. So what are you guys' thoughts on that, especially now that big tech social media was really anti-Trump? They didn't even hide it. What do you guys think that's going to happen now that Biden, like, let's assume Biden is going to be president. How do you think he will work for or against big tech and especially social media?
I think him specifically, he's going to do nothing about it. It really bothers me that there's that amount of bias in these networks. And, you know, I'm not a supporter of either of these two candidates, so it doesn't really matter to me about them so much as like crowding out the other more subtle and nuanced conversations about political issues and social issues that we faced, as opposed to allowing everything to be like pro-Trump or anti-Trump. Like, that's not even the conversation that I want to have. You know, I'm fine with either of those two candidates if they're actually discussing like much broader and more important and imperative kind of issues at hand to me. So do I think the networks are to blame about that? Yeah, to some degree, I think they are. But at the same time, you know, like, I excuse their bias because I know that that's going to happen anyway. So then it kind of comes down to the people that are listening to that. Are most people going to want to curate feeds for information integrity? I don't know. Probably not.
Definitely not. People just want to hear things that make them think they're right, myself included, like everybody. As far as to answer your question, I don't think much gets done. You know, if it ends up being Biden with, GOP Senate and an even stronger GOP House than before, I think we got 2 years of literally nothing being done in Congress. So, like, tech's just going to get, I guess, more powerful. The only hope, I guess, is that we see, one thing about the list making, it would be something like, Josh Hawley is like, hey, these people are making lists and Twitter's acting on the list. You know what I mean? Twitter's allowing doxing of Trump fundraisers or people who paid for things like that.
Could you explain to me real quick, because I've seen it come by on Twitter, but I've tried to avoid Twitter a lot over the past couple of days. So could you explain about what's going on with those lists? It's like hit lists.
It's just it's no big deal when it was. So there's been a couple. I mean, I'll tell you who the important people are. So like the one lady who went on TV, I think yesterday morning or whatever, she is I believe a Washington Post columnist, but it's not the Washington Post, it's another major, newspaper. And she said something like, we need to ensure that, there are no survivors of like the Trump movement, that they can't get a job, that they can't be a part of any agency or so, like, for example, Chad Wolf, who runs the Department of Homeland Security, he shouldn't have a job in government anymore ever because he served for President Trump, right? So that's what she is talking about. And then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came out. She was like, rather flippantly saying, like, I hope people are archiving all these Trump supporters, so we know who they are. Something
wow.
And then, a couple other people who are prominent kind of, retweeted that or encouraged that. A couple, and, 3 or 4 of them are, work for news organizations, like that Reza Aslan guy who just went on TV and ate brain once. He had a human's brain once on television. So that's who that is.
What is this now?
No, he did. He had a show where he went off and he explored various cultures. And on one of these episodes, he engaged in cannibalism and ate part of a human brain.
Who and where?
On CNN, Reza Aslan.
Jeez, interesting.
It's real. Yeah, he's obviously deranged. And he was one who was like, we need to figure out all these people are and make sure they never get, any kind of, they don't get lives anymore, basically. So if if that keeps going on and you start to see, like, again, the doxing of like Trump fundraisers, or this kind of like organizational attempt to like out people who like funded the campaign or something along those lines, I could see a couple members of the Senate getting really upset about that because those are their donors too, most likely. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I think that'll happen though is like like most things, I think Google or Twitter or Facebook will have to just make a big mistake, and then But I think one of the lessons I hope the GOP learned over the last couple of years is that like you do need to address what's going on with companies that handle people's opinions, and because I'm hardcore about it. I think I should be allowed to tell people on Twitter to go kill themselves. Like I don't think words are violence. I think that all social networking needs is a mute block button, and everything else is fair game.
Apart from the screaming fire in the theater thingy, I guess, or
well, that doesn't really happen on.
One example that you just mentioned, to get really technical, it's kind of edgy because you encourage somebody, but you're not telling them to literally do it, or so to speak. But
Sure, I basically like if it's illegal in the real world, probably shouldn't be illegal online. But I can walk up to somebody in a safe way and be like, "Go kill yourself, bro," and like walk away. Like that's not a crime. And if I do that, I don't even think I'm allowed to. I mean, maybe I'm allowed to be banned from a store for saying that, but I think that's a stretch. You know what I mean? So with that example, it's one thing, but like I think the old rules of the internet were perfect. No doxing, no kids, no animals, and if you kind of stick with that, you're pretty good. Obviously, some celebrities, some people of influence might have a harder time with trolls. So give them an ability to block in bulk, which I think people already do. They already have lists that you can upload so that you can block people. So if beyond that you're trying to control either the narrative or a narrative, or you're just trying to keep people like Milo or Alex Jones off of Twitter. And I think that it's tough, man, because Twitter is a company, and they're allowed to do things their own way, but they are publicly traded, and their product is literally like speech. Like the thing that they offer is a blank area for me to write text in and submit. So I do think it's different than other online guys think that Facebook's the same way. If you were let's pretend Facebook existed in the 80s. Should they ban gay people off of Facebook in the 80s? You know what I mean? Because that would have been a topic of conversation. Like if Facebook would have been in the 80s, you would have had the discussion of this picture has two guys kissing. Should this be on Facebook? And it would have been a legitimate conversation. Politically, if you will. Culturally, most people would have been beyond it at that point. But politically, you'd be like, is this appropriate? And most if you had the internet in the 80s and all things were equal, I think most companies would ban images of gay affection and things like that. So if you're against that, then you should be against Alex Jones being banned because he referenced some conspiracy theory, or Owen Benjamin's banned because he made fun of a teenager who was you put him, who's a public figure with a check mark, so it's not the same as it's not the same rights issue as can a restaurant discriminate based on color? You know what I mean? That's Twitter's a different thing, and it has to be analyzed differently. And I think the GOP learned their lesson this time. I think the next time there's some kind of like major issue where like Twitter dares to censor like a sitting senator or which is outrageous. Like the fact that they're censoring the fact I don't care about warning markers on a politician's tweet, but the fact that they're removing the text from the president's tweets is absolutely outrageous. And I don't care who the president is. That's outrageous.
Yeah, it's a little bit over the top.
I can't believe that's not enough for a lot of people in Congress to really push some kind of change. But they're all paid off for the most part. So we'll see. Maybe they'll ban a far leftist for saying something crazy like, burn all Trump supporters or something like that. Because we're going to get to that point too, where it's like, being banned for saying Sandy Hook was a conspiracy theory is okay, but like calling for rounding up of Trump officials to be shot
Nuremberg
will be left. Yeah, right. Like Nuremberg trial. Like, you're out of your mind. These people are out of their mind.
Yeah, reconciliation trials or something.
Yes, truth. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, like fuck.
And that guy's Robert Wright, if I'm not mistaken, and he's a columnist for the New York Times on his best days. So it's funny. Like I said it I was saying this in group chats, and every once in a while I would send in a super chat to like a YouTuber that I was watching, so they would have to read it, and I would literally just say like, if Trump loses, they're going to come for you. If Trump loses, Trump supporters are going to go to their state capitals and wave flags, and they're going to pray, they're going to chant USA, but they're not going to attack anybody. They're not going to cry.
Yeah.
But these people cried, and then literally like they were okay with a 3-year long investigation. Like they were cool with it. And so they're not going to like, they're going to come for you. And, let's say, let's get crazy. Like if the House and the Congress, if the House and the Senate and the presidency all went Dem, we would see something drastic. Like, they would like something crazy, like make it a crime, like some kind of crime to be a Trump supporter, like a retroactive crime. Either you lose your voting right of some kind, or they would come and try to.
You have to pay a tax. They're going to make you pay an extra
take
tax.
Your kids from you because you must be racist, and we can't let kids be raised by racism anymore. We would see something wacky, and I don't mean it would do it. I mean like we would see a discussion of something wacky like that. And I think the fact that like the Dems got slaughtered, like Biden won, quote unquote, with the most presidential votes in history, which is amazing. If let's pretend that they count all these votes and he did win by the most ever, right? All that shows is that people got really tired of Trump, because the rest of the ballots, Dems got slaughtered.
They did.
Like they wasted $100-something million in North Carolina to beat Lindsey Graham, and they dumped another like $80 or something million in Kentucky to beat I forget the lady, I forget her name, and Mitch won by like 66% in Kentucky. Lindsey Graham won by, I don't know, maybe 10 points or so. And then they lost like a bunch of House seats. And they had I don't know if you guys know this, but they had after the election, they had what's called a family call, where all the Democrats, not all, but, good number of them, get on a conference call. Nancy Pelosi got lit into. They had Democrats screaming at her about, nobody should ever say defund the police again. Nobody should ever say socialism again. A lot of people almost lost their races that they should have no business almost losing. The projections for the DNCC for 2020 are drastic. We had there was a congresswoman from Florida who I think is a complete asshole. She was crying on the phone. She lost, and she was saying that like people can't pronounce her name. Like they're, and then of course you have people like Rashida Tlaib going like, we have to address how we use language, because defund the police might have not been the best way to explain what the motive is. So they're going to try to hide, defund the police and socialism under some other kind of word, but they're falling apart. They lost state houses. They didn't pick up a state house. And so what's going to happen in 2021 is the state houses are going to start redistricting, and to watch, a number of people have left the cities this year. A lot of New Yorkers are probably not going to come back. A lot will, but a lot won't. That's bad. That's like really bad for the Democrats to have 30 plus states of the union with their houses under complete GOP control, and they're going to start redrawing the voting maps. And it's going to last for 10 years when they do it, because that's the way it works. So they can celebrate all they want. You know what I mean? Like it's
Well, 10 years ago would have been, you're looking at 2010. That was full up and down control, I thought.
No, what I mean is that when redistricting occurs, that's on the state level. So the state house and senates are the ones that the state congresses are the ones that redistrict. So when I say they lost state houses, like, I forget where.
Yeah.
They lost. I think in New Hampshire, they flipped a couple, like the GOP flipped a couple. So when Pennsylvania starts, and more importantly, actually, like New York, the state starts to redraw their districts, that will be under GOP control.
Interesting.
Now, New York will obviously be under Democrat control, but they are probably going to. There's rumors that they're going to cut AOC's district out because they hate her so much, which I completely buy into.
I mean, I have no idea. I don't follow her local or state level response in any way. I mean, I obviously have looked a little bit into her career.
She upsets the system.
Does she?
I mean, when she primaried, I forget the guy's name now. The guy that she knocked out, he was number 2 in line for the House. Like the person, like, okay, so she went against a guy who sat. All right, I'm gonna look him up real quick because it's gonna bother me. But she basically went in a primary against a sitting Democrat who was there for a long time, and so he was second in line for like the House. And so you gotta understand, like, and everything about the House and the Senate is about seniority, right? So like when she took out like the House's number 2, Joe Crowley is who she took out. When she took him out, he was the chair for a while too. He was in office since 1999, Mike.
A little while.
From 1999 to 2019, and she primaried him. Do you know how many people owe him favors, who owe him just like their careers? Like, it's an endless list, right? So like he sits high up in the actual committee. He's like part of the DNC machine. He's not an elected official. So they're gonna, I mean, and if they do it, she'll just run for Senate and she'll win. You know what I mean? So like, 'cause she's like a superstar. But they might redistrict her out. It's very, very, very likely. We might see that Nebraska district, the way they handle their electoral votes, that might change to where Nebraska, Omaha can't just give one electoral vote away.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things will happen, and it'll just for 30 of the states, it'll be under Democrat control. GOP control.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a long arc.
Well, I mean, Mitch McConnell planned the Supreme Court for years, for like ever since Bork. Mitch McConnell was like, okay, it's on. You know what I mean? And then so his, I mean, like, a lot of these guys play long games, which is why I think a lot of this upcoming court stuff, like, the American public's just not ready. American public doesn't like long games.
Sure. It's an intention long game is hard.
Yeah, they don't have it. They're already by the time the Supreme Court of the United States tells the state of Pennsylvania to audit their counts, and that the 20 electoral votes has to come off the map, and then they do the same thing in Nevada.
They have to do that.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. No, they have to do that state by state, right? Or
it's just going to it's going to be where
that they can. Because I understand the Supreme Court can only rule over the U.S. Constitution, and then if there's anything wrong with the counting, like what you had in 2000 in Florida, you have to go to the Supreme Court within that state. So in worst case scenario, you have to go to like a dozen or 24 different states and a bunch of lawsuits, right?
Not all the time. So the Pennsylvania thing is, so in this election we have PA and Nevada. They're the big ones. There's obviously some Michigan and Wisconsin stuff going on, but for easy conversation, we'll take Nevada and Pennsylvania. So the court system in the United States is a big triangle, and it all leads up to the Supreme Court. And every state has their own Supreme Court, obviously. Now, the 9 justices of the United States Supreme Court, I don't know the appropriate term for what each one does, but each one has responsibility over a group of state courts. Okay. So, for example, Pennsylvania, the state court of Pennsylvania, and also New Jersey, Delaware, and I want to say the Virgin Islands and maybe Maryland. I don't know. But in that area of the country, those courts, those 4 or 5 state courts, fall under the responsibility or oversight of Judge Alito. He is responsible for them. So Pennsylvania is different because what happened in Pennsylvania is they have a law, and it's on the books, and it hasn't been changed, and it says that you can't count votes after 8 p.m. It's just very simple. Election day comes, all the votes that were in before 8 p.m., they are counted. Anything after 8 is not counted. And so what the Secretary of State did in Pennsylvania, and so the Secretary of State decided to change that law, okay, which she can't do. That's a legislative activity. And when she did that, because of COVID, she extended, and it might have fell under a judge's executive order. The governor's executive order. But basically, the Secretary of State pushed the date to where how long the votes could be counted for past 8 p.m. on Election Day, which is in conflict with Pennsylvania law. Now, the GOP took that, the Pennsylvania GOP people took that to their Supreme Court, and their Supreme Court, I think, told them to go get bent. And so what happened is Alito was like, sorry, guys.
Hey, where'd you go? Did we lose you? No, you're still showing up, but you're not coming through the mic. Hey, Bryan, you want to reload your connection? Because you don't seem to be coming through right now. Hold on just a second here. Hey, Bryan. Can I get a check from you? Can you hear us? You might want to reload. Can I get a check from anybody else, though, real quick? Either of the 2 Tims. Hold on. We'll be reloading this in just a second here.
Stuff going on. For example, if you're in California and you make a lot of money, You probably buy a condo in Nevada, and you use that as an address to save yourself those California taxes. And so what happened, and a lot of like this used to be the way, like car insurance used to be really easy to game, like back in like the 90s, like before it got like real computerized. You could register your car to your place of work if you worked in a state that had like cheaper insurance, and then you would just like register your car in that state and then like get around paying mad insurance, or like different registration rules, things like that.
Right.
So kind of like that in Nevada. The people, like, so if you have a condo in Nevada, you're not a primary resident. Your primary residence in California. I don't know how the taxation thing works. Like, I don't know how having a condo in California, in Nevada, saves you from taxes. But those people apparently voting in Nevada is against the law. Rumor has it that that's been going on for quite some time, where the old sacred cow in Nevada for the Democratic Party is Harry Reid, who he's the reason why we're at this mess right now, if you think about it, if you know the history. But Harry Reid in Nevada was a senator, and his whole machine apparently involved a lot of these California second homeowners, things like that. And it's not something I can prove. It's just like a rumor that's been going around in political circles for a while. But apparently the Trump campaign has a couple thousand that they have informed I think the Nevada State Court about, and you can be certain that if they found 3,000 and that's the number they informed the court about, they didn't stop counting. You know what I mean? So so that's the thing where the lawsuit will come up through finding some kind of fraud. Same thing in Michigan. There's some kind of like glitch in a computer system that, if it's not a glitch, it looks to be like a real thing. It doesn't matter. But up there, Nevada and Michigan will be lawsuits that make their way through the states. But Pennsylvania is very, very different. Pennsylvania is that the Democrats that control that state made a couple of very, very bad decisions, and the Supreme Court just slapped them on the wrist. And I think next week we'll see those 20 electoral votes come off the table.
Do you think that they're not going to be a part?
What state? Not Pennsylvania?
Of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. Do you think that when you say they're going to come off the table?
Yeah, thanks for adding all the context there.
Yeah, and if you want to
definitely summarizes it nicely. If you're correct and all that, of course, which I can't really judge by just listening to you. But thank you for explaining. It does make a lot more sense now.
Yeah. If you want to hear something kind of funny, I'll do it real quick. Because you're not from the country or whatever. Harry Reid, the guy in Nevada, he do you remember when Obama picked a Supreme Court judge on his way out the door, and the Senate wouldn't put him on the court? So it used to be in the Senate that in order for you to turn down a judge, used to have this, a super majority, which is just like, it's like a majority plus a number of seats. Doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So a while ago, Obama was in office, and he was getting his federal judges caught up. And so caught up meaning like he wasn't getting them approved and things like this. So Harry Reid then he did what was called the nuclear option, which is basically remove supermajority from all the judges that had to be confirmed, with the exception of the Supreme Court. And Mitch McConnell warned him not to do this, that it was short-sighted, and that one day the roles would be reversed, and Mitch McConnell would have to do the same thing, but to a Supreme Court seat. I forget what year this was, but so Harry Reid does that, and he did that, for like a short gain. He wanted federal judges, just like a bunch of judges to go and sit that we've never heard of, whoever. They go and sit on the circuit court, and they sit there for their life. So then what happens is that the tables are turned when Obama gets Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell, takes away the supermajority. I might be getting that slightly wrong, but I'm not going to waste everyone's time looking it up. But basically, McConnell's prediction came true. They didn't seat that judge, and then smart. This is why, like, the story of McConnell, kind of like realizing, but after Bork and Clarence Thomas, that the left was starting to really put these tests on the judges when they went to that you really shouldn't kind of do these things, but they started really, and they were rifling through their personal lives. Mitch McConnell seeing that back in the 80s, 90s, and kind of waiting for the moment to exercise his power and deny Obama his judge, which everyone can complain about. But the fact is the Senate had the majority, so even if they heard the judge, the Senate could vote no. So it was a waste of time and money to seat that judge in the eyes of the Senate at that time. And then it was a big gamble too, because you never would have guessed that Trump would have won that election coming up. He was throwing the dice, and then Trump gets in, and Trump, lo and behold, gets 3. And the next president, if it's Trump, he'll get 2 more, because if Trump actually pulls this off and wins, Clarence Thomas will resign, and Stephen Breyer will resign. Stephen Breyer and Kennedy flipped a coin to see who could resign a couple years ago, and that's when Trump got his second judge, I guess. But if Biden wins, Joe Biden is the guy who tried to destroy Clarence Thomas, because this is like an awesome like if you look at history as like a big story, like this is a pretty awesome way it played out, because if Biden wins, Thomas is on the court, and the president is the person who was the chairman during his confirmation and allowed what Thomas believes to be unfounded accusations, and like tried to ruin his life and his reputation. Right. Thomas called it a high-tech lynching. That's how he felt about it. And then the vice president is Kamala Harris, who basically sat there and tried to get Brett. I mean, they all tried to get Brett Kavanaugh destroyed, but her exchanges with Kavanaugh were especially hostile, if you will. So, Biden will get 1 if he's lucky, and Breyer might resign just to give Biden the chance to put someone, young
right
on the court, if you will. But it's an amazing, like, if you think about that, like if you watch Clarence Thomas's documentary, which is really good. It's a really good movie. I forget what it's called, but it's basically the only Clarence Thomas documentary that exists. It kind of goes through his life, and it's very, and like Biden was nice to him, but man, in a very snide way when you watch the going back and forth now.
Can we roll back a little bit to what you were talking about before in terms of the 20 electoral votes for Pennsylvania? So
sure.
When you say they're going to get wiped off the board, it just means that they go back into contest, right?
I mean, right. They've taken off the table for Biden. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're going to eliminate.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on in the background generally.
No, I don't.
Any country. No, it's good to chat this context, because I want to say that these are the things generally don't see discussed on TV, for example, or on Twitter or anywhere else. And if people discuss it, it's just yelling at each other pretty quickly. So
and it's such an incredibly
nice
nuanced
to just have a civil conversation about it.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And the American court system is weird compared to a lot of the other world's court systems.
Yeah, here it works top down, where for you it works the other way around.
Yes. So with Pennsylvania, I don't know what it will look like, because I don't remember. I mean, I remember Florida. I don't want to give my age or anything, but I was, exiting high school around that time. And I don't remember what the TVs, the TV maps, I don't remember if they changed the color of Florida back to white or back to brown instead of red or blue, instead of blue rather. But I do remember it was no problem for them to chill for even George Bush at the time. Like it was just like it was it's very strange how different the pundits did about it then as they do now. There's like they just didn't.
It has
like,
evolved,
I think Time
right?
Magazine devolved.
Sure.
Time Magazine had printed a cover. There were a couple of newspapers I think that printed some covers, but so my point is that like if come Monday or Tuesday, there's another order that says like you will audit this election, or you will do whatever the Supreme Court says this or that. I would expect the nations, the news organizations to change the color of that state while they audit it, but I don't think they will. I think they'll just pretend that it's like a stupid, frivolous lawsuit. I think the game of the media will be like, this is all stupid, until like the state is ordered to like certify it by the Supreme Court or something. I don't know how that's going to work because in Florida, the Supreme Court didn't decide the winner. If I'm not mistaken, they just told Florida to just stop counting. They're like, you guys are done. And then it went to Bush. And I remember, being a young liberal, of course, Bush stole the election and Bush was Hitler, and Bush was stupid and Bush was a dumb monkey, and he was a stupid hick. You know what I mean? Like, and then I remember when a lot of people were like, yeah, well, good number of Republicans say they could have a beer with George Bush, and I'm like, how do you?
What kind of metric
president?
is that?
Yeah, but now I get it. As I'm older now, I totally understand that mindset where it's like, if you understand the system that you're in, we're in a federal system, the president is actually kind of an appropriate metric for the president. Is that somebody you're comfortable having a beer with? Is that someone you're comfortable sending overseas to talk to another world leader? Obviously, for a lot of people, Donald Trump is not that person. But
no, but they might think that he's good, as a businessman and making deals and stuff like that. Yeah. Even though that's probably more image than truth, to be honest. But.
And what's funny is that like a lot of the narrative for Trump's 4 years was that other foreign leaders hate him, and that's just false. There were numerous, Macron loves Trump. Trump pulled out of the Paris Accord. It's like the second thing he did. And Emmanuel Macron loves Trump. Like, and you can go find pictures and video of them like being very, very cordial with each other. Like, not even only in press conferences, just like, video that's like shot where like they don't know they're being videotaped at like a meeting or something, The only people, Trudeau doesn't like him. Obviously, I think Merkel doesn't like him. Obviously, obviously whatever goes on in Brussels, they don't like him very much. But I think, Boris Johnson liked him up until he was declared a loser. And then obviously like the Saudis got along, India, up until the coronavirus thing, he was his relationship with Z was very interesting because they seemed to like each other, but also do tough business with each other. And I thought that was very interesting that like they both complimented each other, but like also talked a little shit. I would have loved it, and I don't want to talk about it like it's over, but one of the things I would have liked to have seen is I would have liked to have seen Trump get to play out the game with China's president, because I think their relationship is just super interesting. The guy from Japan who had to step down loves him. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Australia. Yeah, and then so is Australia's prime minister like super funny and based like Trump? Do I have that wrong?
I don't know about that. I don't think so.
Australia's prime minister?
Yeah, I think they're pretty.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think they're pretty.
I'm not sure. There was
Labor Party kind of oriented.
I don't know who was in control over there, but one of I'm looking it up right now. Scott Morrison. Okay, he is the leader of the Austrian Liberal Party. I think this guy loves Trump.
Okay.
He became. Let me just kind of get a Prime Minister of Australia. He got there in 2019. Yeah, he's kind of like Australia first. If I really want to get this right though, because we're live on air.
Yeah, sure. That's fair.
But condemned the mass shootings, extreme weapons. Yeah, he's like anti. Yeah. He's very much in the Nigel Farage style of Donald Trump support, I guess, is the best way to explain him. Anti-immigration,
populist.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Australia has some. Yeah, obviously, Australia has some amazing like crackdown footage for COVID that's been coming out.
For sure.
So I don't know how much he's involved in that, but because I don't know how Australia works, governance-wise, but.
I do know somebody who lives in Melbourne, and I believe I haven't spoken to him in a few weeks now, but like they've been locked in their houses since March.
Yes.
One person from their household is allowed to go to one store per day.
Wow.
Like it's super strict the way it's over there, so it's super authoritarian. So it's not just the footage that you see coming out of there; it's also I do think it's just the area around Melbourne that's so extreme. I do think other areas are a bit looser, if I'm correct.
Yeah, like I would love to, Mike, we obviously have a bunch of Aussie friends we can go talk to. But I'm kind of curious as like how much the prime minister is involved in that, because he seems like the kind of person who's like anti that. You know what I mean? Just based on his general other politics, he would be the kind of person who wanted to open it up. But I don't know if they have like, they obviously have provinces of some kind in Australia where, there's a governor of some kind controlling it. But yeah, I think, but that was another thing. I think like, I kind of hope history is kind to the Trump term, you know what I mean? Because, like, I think he did really well with foreign leaders. I think if you didn't like him, it's because he made you, like, pay up. Or he took, or like, he stops you from going and killing a bunch of innocent people in the Middle East somewhere. And that's why you don't like him, And, or he pulled out of your coalition and you don't get his, like, $2 billion a year anymore or whatever,
There's a lot of bureaucracy that was dismantled.
Yeah. I think like, like one of the first things Biden's going to do apparently is reinstate the critical race theory stuff. So like, to me, like that just says that we're going to get a lot of immature virtue signaling from President Biden for as long as he's there. Like, it's just like, these people are happy they got a dog. Like, there's people that are happy there's a dog going back to the White House. It's like, you got to give me a break. so, but yeah, his first move will be to tell governments they can start teaching white people that they're horrible because they were born a certain way. It's just crazy to me. So, and that was actually my biggest reason for supporting Trump. Like, aside from all the lols and just being like a general like shitposter, the one of the most important things was like he was anti-war.
Yeah.
And he was like the living embodiment of being anti-critical race theory. And I think critical race theory is a terrible, terrible thing.
I'm kind of surprised it ever became that mainstream, to be honest.
I think a lot of people are. And I think a lot of people who laughed it off when it was just a university navel gazing class. But the thing is that like it seeped into the lowest form of journalism's first. It went into video game journalism, and then those people got hired into the video game industry, and then it went from there to TV shows and but not TV shows, like lower level TV shows, like on the CW and like, well, you don't know what that is, but on the on the third tier networks that nobody really watches, they started to push this stuff.
Right.
And then it creeped onto your kids shit. Like it went on to Nickelodeon and like the Disney Kids networks, and now it's in movies and TV shows, and it's in enterprise business human resources training manuals, and it's in government workshops.
But what do you think about like you were talking about the cat ladies, or so to speak, earlier, the cat moms, about how a lot of this stuff is just the vocal minority. Like if let me put it this way: if I talk to you guys or anybody else or anybody I meet, in normal life and in meet space or online, and actually sit down and have a talk with them, 99% of the people I talk to all agree about this crazy shit, about how weird it is, or so to speak.
Yes.
Like in the end, everybody wants a roof over their head. They want, I don't know, kids, and they want their kids to be happy and to go to school and have a nice life, and they want to go on a holiday every now and then. And, that's basically something we can all agree on, I guess.
Yeah, most people want something simple where they can just carve out some happiness, right, for them and theirs. However,
when we talk about this stuff, I think it's mostly the vocal minority, and I doubt if you can really push this on the majority, on the silent majority, or so to speak. And this is going to be a really interesting test for societies to see if they have like a self-cleaning oven type of mechanism, where it's like with the Bitcoin network. If you attack it, then you either find a crack, like a soft spot, that's going to be improved, which strengthens the network. And the same could be said about society, that if you throw an attack at it, that it learns from it and it improves because of it. And I'm kind of curious
100%.
if that's going to happen here, because generally things have to get worse first before they get better. So
yeah, so like if we talk like most of the people I talk to pretty much think that like if we start talking about if I talk about QAnon, they think that's crazy, and if I talk about critical race theory stuff, they think that's crazy. And however, though, the thing that and again, like you said, like most people just kind of want to get by, you know what I mean? But what happens is when the vocal minority, the ones that are on that critical race theory thing, they teach, how do I say this? It's the way, like, the critical race theory stuff kind of teaches you at first that you are guilty of something, and then kind of goes from there. And if you have a large part of the population that just wants to get by, they're going to shuffle into the training seminar, sit down, and listen, because they don't want to get fired. You know what I mean? And so they're going to listen. And then it's just the way that I think that the nature of critical race theory allows it to move outside that vocal minority pretty easily, because everything about it is focused on surface level stuff. It's about how you look. And so when we talk about, for example, like slavery, and they talk about how America will never reconcile its sin of slavery, most people in America are kind of like, yes, that was bad, right? And then when the critical race theory kind of like they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, everyone thinks it's bad, so here are all the problems that are at fault. Here are the problems that exist now because of that. And a lot of people, not as many, but a lot of people will still be like, yeah, I can see how that works. and then it kind of like it just kind of like whittles away at you, and then you're like, and you're to blame for that too because you have privilege. And then a lot of people, because I think it kind of preys on your ability on people that want to help, right? So if you're a good person and you hear this kind of like academic lecture that whittles at your idea of self, and then all of a sudden it's like, and because you haven't felt this way, or you don't have this experience, you're to blame for it. I think a lot of people are like, wow, I can't believe I'm to blame for that. How can I help? And then it's, here's how you vote. Here's where we're meeting on the corner. Because like I got friends that absolutely buy into the it makes my skin like, I get like a physical response when I hear it. When I hear like one of my friends go like, "Oh, that's just my white privilege talking," because I'm like, "No, that's just you talking," But
Yeah.
they've been berated, and it's not just like at work. It's on Instagram and Facebook. Not so much Twitter, because I think it's a little harder to do that on Twitter than it is on Instagram. Because on Instagram, you just drop one of those square quotes, and quotes are powerful. Slogans are powerful. So like, I could probably open up Instagram right now and pull one, but like just stuff like struggle never ends, or like the people struggle never, just like these like kind of slogans that you see on like when you're just like, at home and like you're petting your dog, and like you on Instagram and you like, like you picture your friend's kids, and then the next one is like, never forget that white privilege is something that can never be unlearned. You're like, yeah, it can never be unlearned. You double tap it and you like it. You move on. Like, and that's a thought now that's in your head. That's inception. So I think, and then on the flip side, because like the right has their crazy stuff too. You get like, crazy ANCAP libertarians. You get the Q people. You get, the thing about Q, and this is why like, but like people are like, oh my God, Q is dangerous. I'm like, no, Q just like, if you don't agree with what you see, you just leave and you don't look at it anymore, right? The Q people aren't going to hit you up on Instagram and be like, you're a traitor if you don't believe, QAnon's latest post. You're not a real American. It's just like, there's Q if you want to go read the post, and there's a community of people that talk about it if you want to go join that. The left pushes, and they always have. That's like what they do. The left really pushes that culture, pushes that up into the culture, and the right tends to react and push back. Like the abortion fight is a pretty good example of that, where the leftists constantly kind of increase either like various laws or funding, or just increase the ability to go have an abortion regardless of what you think of it. And the right is always kind of trying to bat that down. The right doesn't really come up with ideas that they push into the culture as much as the left does. And then of course the left, they're all, and this is like not a criticism, it's just how it is, like they're very like, they live by their music, TV, and movies. And so like they have that arsenal of like imagery, and like I know a lot of people who are liberal because they watch The Wire, like literally, like their worldview about crime. And I mean, this is like a 10-year-old, 12-year-old TV show. I don't know how old it is, but it's I got friends of mine that like still look at the world through like this incredibly, it was a good TV show, but it's all about race relations and crime and police, and they think that they have this amazing understanding about those subjects because of this show. And the right doesn't really have that. Like the right doesn't have like, people don't understand the Constitution because they watch this amazing, Christopher Nolan movie. Like it just doesn't exist, it's They just act differently. So to go back to your point, though, I think while most people, if you get them one-on-one over lunch, a lot of people agree on a lot of things, like probably most things. But that the critical race theory, the intersectionality stuff, that's being pushed onto the culture unlike anything I've seen. It's almost like they should have to start paying for advertising or something. It's pretty outrageous.
Well, tomorrow's a big day for everybody. We're going to finally
interesting times.
See what, turns up.
Yeah, to get back to my point I was making at the beginning of the show, I just hope it doesn't, divide people further. But the points you're pointing out, I'm also seeing that, that generally people just get divided further, which is kind of sad because I do believe that most people are looking for the same things in their lives and in the world. And of course, there are things we disagree on. It's just really sad that it has to, in the end, it always becomes like two camps, two groups.
If we could find some way to eliminate the embarrassment of being wrong, the world goes a long way.
But that's a personal thing that doesn't happen until people take responsibility, and that's what people don't want, and that's why people elect other people who can't really solve the things that they're hoping to have solved, but that way you can blame the person that you elected and who's supposed to represent you, because it's their job, it's their fault. Or if it's your guy, then it's not his fault, it's the other guy's or woman's fault.
And I fall victim. I give Trump a lot of leeway, and it's because I like the show. And the excuse I find myself giving for him, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, is that he doesn't really belong there, right? Like historically speaking, he's not a politician, and so it's kind of like your Uncle Dave. Maybe your Uncle Dave runs a great business, but it's kind of like I know he's not a normal dude because he's like super rich, but I don't see a Trump presidency and an Elon Musk presidency being all that different in terms of the weird stuff they decide to do, But I give them a lot of leeway because of that, and that's like a bias that I have, and that's baked in, and I don't know how I stop that. So I don't even when I have a friend who's like, I'm not voting for Trump simply because of I don't like the way he looks. I'm or acts. I'm like, okay, that's perfectly reasonable, Once you start getting into here's why you shouldn't like Trump, then you start getting into that proves somebody right or wrong, and people just hate being wrong. It's like being naked, and if if a lot of my friends could if a lot of people could just be wrong without feeling shame, I think we make a lot of progress. Just in everywhere, in math, science. All industries.
Well,
exactly right. Not a lot of places are being wrong isn't always the worst thing, right? You can discover what you were wrong on, reloop on that in a sense, and grow from that.
Fastest way to learn.
The healthiest work environment is one where you don't feel like you're on the chopping block if you ask questions about what's going on.
Exactly.
But I've been in many work environments where it's you can, and it's not said to you. It's nothing that's spoken. It's just a feeling that you get, and it's you don't want to be the one who's asking questions because that means you don't know as much, and that means you might get fired.
And that's why sometimes on Twitter I just try to throw controversial things out there where I know I'm partially wrong, but I'm still curious about another point of view or something. So I'm just looking for more points of view, more sources. Then I'll just throw something out there which might sound ridiculous or even at a clown face or something, just to see what comes back. Because I know that I don't have all the information, so plus it's a lot easier to get attention, or so to speak. It's not really attention I'm looking for because I'm what I call reverse web of trust. I'm trying to do it in a way so that the people who can read between the lines see what I mean, and that everybody else ignores it instead of just ranting at me and spamming my notifications.
Sure.
So I'm not looking for attention or likes or retweets or whatever. I'm just looking for new insights. And I'm not saying I'm really good at this or something, at being wrong, but only thing I'm trying to point out is that I do try to be wrong, and especially in public, like on Twitter, because if I'm wrong, then I'm probably going to learn something new. And as soon as you simply accept for yourself that it's okay to be wrong, because everybody is, it becomes a lot easier, and you start to learn a lot more, or at least that's how it works for me.
100%. I've noticed that I can ask a question just to Twitter itself, like as a tweet, much easier than I can ask what's going on in a like group chat. Like I can shout it to the wind, no problem. Like, what's the best way to do this? And just send tweet. But if I'm in like a group chat and I don't understand what's going on, I'm like 1,000% more hesitant to be like, what are you guys talking about? Yeah. I don't know how you get over that.
Yeah, I see your point, because it feels less, how do you say it?
One's just like throwing
it's less personal. It's not a group of people but the whole world.
Yeah, one's like I'm putting a note up on a bulletin board. Another one's like, we're sitting around like a campfire, and
right.
Like you've been talking for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden, one kid goes like, "What are you guys talking about over here?"
Yeah, and everybody's looking at you funny.
What are you, an idiot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Kind of safer, more anonymous to do it from behind a computer screen.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am going to at least end the broadcast here.
To really learn something
that's all right.
on social media, because if you just try to have intelligent conversations, unless you're like super intelligent and you have something really interesting to add, which I generally don't. I'm not good at writing beautiful threads, etc. Because my English,
All right, so this is the end of the broadcast. I'm going to say goodbye.
My vocabulary, my grammar.
Check out. I don't know if you're hearing me.
Construct, really beautiful sentences like
over there.
and such. So,
but this has been fun.